Welcome to Accountants Law Pod, where accounting professionals and law firms converge. Hosted by Lynda Artesani, Sarah Prevost, and Steve Libhart.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. And how is everybody doing?
Well, more importantly, how are you?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm back in my house, so that's a good thing. Compared to the last hurricane 2 years ago, no damages, which is great. Prayed a lot and it worked. So
Yeah,
so
I think a lot of us prayed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was not fun. It was not fun. It's very stressful. I don't think you realize that it's so stressful until you're in it. And well, we were at CleoCon and I was so not focused on CleoCon. I couldn't. I mean, I was worried about my husband being here and trying to do everything himself. And it was just hard because I'm trying to get home and flights are canceled or delayed and I couldn't get out. And my stress was like up here. And I don't like to live up in that kind of a stress. So yeah, I'm glad.
Thank goodness you're safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're going to be safe regardless because we left. And you can see now you're seeing my kitchen. You can see that the pool guy's here. I don't know what he's doing since there's no power, but
I saw him out there with a little vacuum hose in his hand a minute ago.
Must have some battery thing. I don't know, but yeah. So anyway, we're going to talk about being ghosted by your client, which is a wonderful topic, especially for October. and also it happens. You can be ghosted by a person and you can be ghosted by your client. So it can be ghosted in many ways,
Mm-hmm.
And I actually didn't know what this term meant until my daughter told me she was being ghosted. I had to go and Google ghosting and to understand what it is because it's not a term from my generation. We didn't ghost people. So, right, Steve? We didn't ghost anybody.
We weren't allowed to ghost.
You actually answered the phone when it rang. Imagine that. It's a novel thing. Because you didn't know who was calling you. You just picked up the phone, But yeah, so being ghosted by your client pretty much is when you need stuff from them and they don't provide it. I would say that's probably it. And one of the tips I think that's important to think about is, Sarah and I talk about this when we start an engagement with a client, gather the information during the honeymoon period. Because if you don't, that can change and then they can get aggravated because you're asking them for a lot of things and they've already paid you a lot of money and to do the work. Why do I have to do all this work? So then they get busy and our clients are super, super busy. And I think that's probably the main reason why you might find that they disappear on you. It's just they're so busy and you kind of have to stay after it. And I always feel like a nag when I am like, hey, I need the documents. Hey, you kind of go back into the thread and Licio, we've already asked for this. And just the gentle, I love the words gentle reminder because it sounds so soft, but you're reminding them. And I've had that one I picked up from, I think one of our team was like, gentle reminder, I asked you this 3 weeks ago, you never answered it. So yeah, it can go both ways, I'm sure.
Yeah. I do feel like, to your point, Lynda, because they do get so busy, the best way to handle it is just, we're going to ask you a lot up front, setting that precedent like we've done in the past where it feels like a heavy lift in the beginning, just kind of explain that process. But it is hard. And I'm curious what, Steve, you do if a client you're working with them and then nothing, crickets.
If they completely disappear, you know, I think the best tool that we have is just pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, are you okay? How are you? We haven't heard from you. We're concerned. We care. We want to keep the ball rolling here. You make it in their best interest.
Oh, good
for the
point.
reason why you're calling them. You don't make it confrontational. You don't remind them that they haven't responded because they already know that. That's like calling somebody and saying you owe us $50,000 and they already know that. You need to find ways to get around that and show them that you are so in their camp and you're so ready to help them, but you need them to be part of that process. So that concerned approach is, I find, the best. It's like, are you okay? What can we do to help you get there? Sort of thing.
I'm curious. Have you ever tried the approach? I sometimes
here we go.
I sometimes try the approach of, and I don't like to do it sometimes, but I presume based on the lack of responses, you're probably going through quite a bit. I'd like to schedule some time with you
Oh, I like that.
I try that approach too. I love your tip as well. I know Lynda and I were, I mean, it's happened. Lynda and I were just talking about this because she has on Artesani side, she did have a client just kind of do this again to her, repetitive pattern, not a negative thing, but she sort of knew. And then the hardest part, I feel like when a client does do these ghosting moments or periodic times is the amount of time that we have to get the work done.
Right.
It's really hard. Like I know Lynda is super challenged and your life is complicated right now, given the weather predicament that you're in and all the things. And so it was like, how do you not only do you have to handle the disappearing act, and the forgiveness of it, because you don't want to hold it against anybody, but also how do we measure, how do we communicate the other side of that? Because it's
well, something else that works too, the verbiage of, I just want to make sure that we're protecting space for you to get this done in a timely manner.
Oh, that's a great one.
It's always, see, the tax deadline is always the trigger, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden they hear that the taxes are due, and then why isn't it, you get it sometimes where they'll say, why isn't it done? Well, we haven't been able to access your ABC bank account and your credit card, and you haven't answered these questions that we have on these transactions that we just don't know where they go. So we are just sitting here kind of stagnant, and we need you to be responsive. And I think with this particular client Sarah's talking about, he always was great, put his credit card details in, paid every month, and then he flat out disappeared. And when he disappeared, it was just completely gone. Didn't pay his bill. His credit card must have been compromised. Didn't pay his bill. I'm trying to reach out, and I tried texting, I tried emailing, I tried calling, I tried every which way I could, and I got nothing. And I finally just said, well, he's not paying me. I'm not going to continue to do the work. I can't continue to do the work.
Yeah.
And now we're sitting here in the same thing. We're sitting here with an issue because now the work isn't done. And now at this point, I mean, tax wise, there's no way that we can get it done at this date. Probably by the time this is on, it's past the date. And he's such a nice person that sometimes you have clients that and I've had him for so many years and I really like him. So, and I let him know, I'm like, we were supposed to have an appointment yesterday. Well, it was a hurricane and I didn't have power. I wasn't in my house. I had a lot of things going on in my world. I let him know, like, sorry, I'm not going to be able to keep the appointment. And I don't think my husband knows he's on camera. He's walking back and forth. He's trying to get things done. So, oblivious to the fact that he's on camera, but that's okay. So we're just, I try to reach out to him and just let him know. And he's a kind person. So he's like, I totally get it. Let's push this out. Not a rush anymore, but and at this point, because we tried to do it without connecting in person, the last time he kind of came back, I sent a message to the team. I'm like, guess who's back from the dead? Speaking of being ghosted. And then we aggregated what we needed, sent it to him, and nothing. Then I called and all of that, nothing. And now all of a sudden he reached back to me. He's like, hey, I noticed the work isn't done. I'm like, do you nuts? And he sent me the email. I went and looked. I'm actually on with Sarah. And I'm like, it's the same email I sent it to. How can he not have gotten my email? It's the same exact email, unless there's a reason email's being blocked. But I mean, I responded before and we set up a time. So clearly he has it. I just don't know what to do, but he's such a nice person. I'll catch him up and get it done as much as I can. But I'm going to actually, this time, I'm going to get online in a Zoom call with him and get everything connected right there with him and download everything I need. That way, if it breaks again, he's got a weirdo bank, which makes it difficult. It's an odd bank. All those little things that kind of line up against us.
Well, and I think that listening to your description of that experience brings to mind in that kind of situation, it's okay to go ahead and say to them, you know what, we're not going to make the deadline. And because we're not going to make the deadline, let's just use this as an example for tax extensions. You're going to pay $250 a month penalty for not filing on time. And so if you give them the what's going to happen if we don't get this done scenario, sometimes that'll get them to respond.
Yeah,
for sure.
Consequences to those actions.
Consequences, yeah. And if it's all in how you present it, not in
and those are not our consequences, to your point. They're outside of us. Professionally, though, to the situation where Lynda's at, it's a professionally, we don't know what's going on in each other's lives. And so it's also a professional courtesy to your accounting team that's supporting you, just as it would be to your tax team. I can tell you right now, no tax individual is going to want you to drop all the stuff off a few days before. You're out.
No.
If you're complicated, especially, you're going to pay that fee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so it is hard. It is a professional service, and it's that valued professional service. And I see it happen to myself. Things happen, you kind of trip up. I've faced consequences to those things happening. That is the same in concert with what we do. It is the same effect. We cannot make magic happen in less than 20. We don't drop everybody else to put you up front. So we have to think about it in a two-way street. But there's also gratitude. There's gratitude of knowing we've worked well together. Like Lynda, you know how it works. Could you imagine trying to start over right now with anybody else in this bucket?
No. And I truly like this client. I mean, and we've had personal conversations about his music. He's a musician as well, besides being an attorney, and it's fun to talk to him. And then I kind of didn't talk to him a lot now that the firm's grown bigger and somebody's assigned to do the work, and you miss that.
That could be the key right there. You're finding out, is there somebody else in your organization that can help me get these things?
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
Yeah,
we'll get it done. But yeah, it's just it's interesting, and it's going to be a lot to catch up. He's at a big company, big file. So
yeah, it's a lot of work.
Now, what about the ones that ghost us and you finally are going to give up? How do you handle that?
When they come back?
No, when you're going to just give up and say, I can't help you anymore.
Oh, someone that you want to get rid of anyway?
Well, because they've been ghosting you.
I think it's the action of not actually responding.
Sarah. We had one that we were like, this can't continue, because it was putting a burden on the staff.
Yeah,
sure.
They have assigned work that's for the whole week, and then all of a sudden this person skips multiple weeks, bigger client, and then all of a sudden the burden is on us to catch up because you didn't answer our questions or didn't provide access.
That's what I'm asking about. Yeah.
It's sometimes it just becomes too difficult, because if it becomes a repetitive pattern, it's sometimes that you got a client that doesn't bother you much, but then also in two respects, if it's disrupting the workflow with the team, you can't do that to them either. You can't say, hey, I need you to work weekends because so-and-so didn't give you the answers 5 months ago, and now we have 5 months worth of work to catch up on. That's not fair to them either. It's not fair to the other clients that they have to take care of.
We have one client that we really love. We do like working with her, but we have every single month this year asked her to review the financials with us, and she's ghosted us. She doesn't even answer. And our experience with her was this last January, right in the middle of 1099 season, she decided she wanted to rip apart the whole last year's financials. And so I'm going to reach out to her in November and say, we've asked for 11 months now for you to review the financials with us. We can go ahead and do that now, or we can do it in February or March. But we're not gonna play that game this year. Because you've ghosted us all year.
Yeah, I do feel like there's consideration in those conversations of, past patterns have predicted how we're going to handle this going forward. So I feel like we've offered a lot of good tips, like you're saying, pick up the phone, call them. We've tried every medium. Lynda's tried every medium. It's reaffirming the relationship. We enjoy working together. It's just, this is not a workable solution at this point. What are some other viable ways to communicate with you? I had this happen last night. I'm training somebody on the software to help them, and they asked, they're like, is it okay to send you this text? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Just know I will respond. I need to reprioritize how I'm going to respond. So at least we had open communication on how we were going to communicate together. And I feel like the biggest thing I took away was from this CleoCon is there is so much happening in all of our worlds. The number of ways to get a hold of someone, the level of communication, your emails get bogged down depending on what style of working method you do. And so I personally, I don't feel bad in the persistency of saying, you're paying me for a professional service. Let's get this done. But I also will let you know, if you're going to slam me with everything, this is not going to be done overnight. This is
Right.
going to have to feather in based on the current workload. And you're not always going to get Lynda and Sarah. That's just not how this works. We have grown to a space that we have some very amazing, competent team members that do so well, that teach us sometimes some amazing stuff. I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm so glad you know that. And so I feel like we've offered some really tangible tips. It is a challenging space to be in because we are living in such busy worlds and things happen. Like I had a client call me last week, right before I was leaving, and just was like, I'm so sorry to just drop this on you, but so much of my life has changed and I cannot practice law anymore.
Oh,
I'm dealing with some health things. Oh, my heart sank. But then I was also like, when did this happen? Clue me in, please. I'm dying to know. You want to support them. Like to Lynda's point, your heart is there. We work with our hearts. Our hearts are always front and center.
It's always interesting. Right before you go away on anything, it's when these calls come in. At least it seems that way, and it's like even or leads come in. It's like we've been this little quiet space, and all of a sudden, like 5 leads will come in when you're leaving to go to a conference. It's crazy. So
I call that the universe. That's just the power of the universe.
Hitting you hard.
Well, and I'm honestly, I was having a great conversation with my husband this morning, and he says, "Wow, it seems like we should be leading with a gratitude list of where we're grateful for things, because there's so much in that space of leading with gratitude, because it's a boomerang effect of how things come back to you and how you can appreciate.
I like that.
And I appreciated that kind of recentering of that mindset, because it is hard. I don't feel people intentionally ghost, or I think honestly life is busy. So many things are coming at you. The biggest thing I feel like is and maybe we should have this as a session later, is when life throws you this hurricane or this life altering moment, what do you do now? Because it refocuses what's important. To me, what's important is I'm healthy and happy, the team is working well, that they're feeling supported, the company is good, and then my personal life will benefit from that because this stuff is settled.
Very well said. Yeah.
The work-life balance crap, I've been the proponent, like that is not even a phrase that works in my life. This is my life, right? And I work well within it, and I define what those are for me. I feel like that's the same for others, and I feel like that's how you proceed with clients when you're in these so-called ghosting moments, is reaffirming the value, like you said, Steve, of where we are. Lynda, all the mediums that you brought up of all the different ways to communicate. Well, I got a question. I've tried every medium. What am I missing that doesn't work for you? And what should work for you? So I know I can rely on getting a response. I think that's a fair question. That's in any relationship. So, yeah, those are really good tips.
You said it though, Sarah. What you just said there is really prolific, because you said, and this is totally can happen to anybody. You can be going along, and even like a hurricane. Okay, a hurricane is a blurb in my life. We did everything we had to do to be sure we were safe.
Mm-hmm.
Safety was ultimate, but it's the same thing. If somebody has a health issue, that can just throw a wrench in everything and all of your whole entire life. So you really want to be considerate when someone's ghosting you, how you respond. You don't know what's happening in their world. You don't know what's going on. They could be going through divorce or something, taking care of a parent. Those are things that really, their family's not doing well, and they had to take on this role. So you don't expect, or you don't want to like, hey, why don't you give me this? Because when you're under stress, and I can tell you from just coming back from a very stressful time to come into this house, I don't have power, can't see to take a shower, managed to get a coffee this morning because I have a battery thing. But in life, if that's my only worries, that's
right.
What other people have going on. And it's just, all this is fixable. It's all stuff. It's fixable no matter what. Like, we were worried about our couch getting wet, and we spent a lot of money on it from the last storm. And like, you know what? We walked out of here and we said, look, there was things we couldn't lift or put up high. If we have to buy another couch, we have to buy another couch. We did as most we could to protect the house, but that's stuff. It's just stuff. We were safe. And that's the most important thing, all in all. And I think that when it comes to being anybody having something in a life moment. That's a once in a lifetime. Now you get these repetitive people who constantly not responding. That makes it hard if they're constantly ghosting you. What you just said was perfect. How do you reframe the conversation to say, look, and I think sometimes it might be just an awareness, let them know what their ghosting does on the other side. Let them know that
the impact of it. Precisely. Selena Gomez said this really well. She said, where we are today, we need to put our phones down and be present in every moment, because the phone doesn't feed us the information. Like we need to be present. And when I heard this recently, it was on just a random feed of things. I was like, you're right. I do find myself, I'm listening to somebody and I'm trying to get something done. No, you know what? I'm going to start. The phone needs to go down. When I'm talking with staff, talking with clients, these distractions are going to have to mute themselves so I'm present, so I can understand, because human interaction is what we're missing right now, and it helps validate us. And I think that's what's happening is, oh, I'll get to it later. Oh, I'll get to it later. And before you know it, it's like 4 months. Well, getting it to it later means I've got a burden.
Right.
So, yeah. So I'm kind of like in the last 24 hours of thinking of all these things. I was like, okay, because I've had a few come up this way. Life is happening. And then they're like, oh, crap, Sarah, I can't believe it's been 8 months since I last talked to you. I'm like, I know it. Like for Lynda.
Yeah, but now with 1099s coming out, right? So we're going to try to send a list and be proactive on this stuff. What do you do if they don't answer you? Like you're sending out a list, please approve the list. We do the 1099s with you. What if they don't answer you?
I'm straight up going to have to sit down and as a co-founder of a company I'm going to have to call. And as the founder of Minted Lives, I'm going to have to call and say, you know what? I really need this process to be different. It will not look the same.
You can't live through that again.
I'm not. Yeah. I personally lived through the bulk of that. It's a heavier lift, like it is right now, in this time frame. So, but yeah, it's these expectations that are not with judgment, the expectations of with each other, but take the judgment off and move forward. And then I'm grateful. I'm grateful I could answer somebody first thing this morning when I was like, God, they wrote me at 1 a.m, pretty much my time. Like, oh shoot. So, I'm just going to kind of go with that mindset going forward. So
great ideas this morning. I like that.
Yeah. So maybe we just reframe the ghosting. Obviously, Halloween's got us, right? October.
Yeah, well, it's a good time to talk about ghosting for sure.
Absolutely. I love that you said, I had to go look it up because these new terms are so true, Lynda.
I look up so many things. First I ask Tammy and then I look it up if she doesn't know, because sometimes I actually know more things than she does sometimes. I'm like, really? I'm the older one here. Why do you not know these terms, Yeah. And she's like, well, I don't know. I've never heard of that before. I'm like, yeah. So she does know ghosting though.
And you know what? With one final thought that comes to mind with attorneys.
Yeah.
You can say to them, have you ever been ghosted by a client? How did that feel? And guess what? That's where we are. Man, do I care about you?
Oh, but right.
Yeah. You're genuinely caring about someone's well-being. You're hoping that they respond back with, I've been so busy because it's this. And obviously we see numbers, so we can kind of get, like, we could literally write a message. I can see that you're busy because of XYZ in revenue, but it's important for us to connect because I'm concerned about these components, right? These important pieces to you. But to Lynda's point, how do you find that? So I think it's reframing the conversation again. I actively want to participate. I just need to know what's the way to do that. Yeah. Well, this is great. I'm loving this conversation today. Yeah. And I'm glad your internet held out and your power held out right now.
God, so internet know that my internet might.
Well, we're glad you're safe and that you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. And prayers to all the other people out there.
There was some really big tornadoes in this storm. So
yeah.
Right.
It's been a tough one. And to be so back to back too right now. So
there's still people from Helene suffering for sure.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So, well, Teaira, do you want to take us away?
To support the Accountants Law Pod, please take a moment to like, share, and review this episode. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast on YouTube and wherever you find your favorite podcasts. If you have questions, topic requests, or guest suggestions, you can email us at info@accountantslawpod.com or send us a message through our website, accountantslawpod.com. To join us in the Accountants Law Lab, which meets every Friday, visit our website at accountantslawlab.com to sign up.
I hope nobody's ghosting you that's listening to this podcast
Yeah.
today. Hope this is just a conversation that may help you. I really love what Sarah said in this one. So, if you didn't quite pick it up, go back and listen to it, because it was a really good way of approaching clients with this.
Mm-hmm. And I will say a call to action. It is helpful if you are subscribing and or can send us your topic requests. We love to hear feedback from our podcast, especially positive ones, I'll say. But we would love to know what you want to hear. We want to talk about relevant things that are important to you based in the context in what we're serving. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.